Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I'm the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So this is part two of the video I started called What Is It Like Being Black in Brazil? Afro-Brazilians share their experiences. I want to pick up from where I left off in the last video. As I said, I wanted to break it into part one and part two, you know, keep people in tune. A lot of people don't want to watch more than a video that goes more than 8 minutes, in some cases 6 minutes. So I thought I would break the video up. Keeping with what I said in the previous video, I also want to talk about, I don't want to make this as just all doom and gloom. I've said in numerous videos that Afro-Brazilians have come up in a number of ways in the last 10, 15 years. I would argue that there's been more progress in the last 10, 15 years than the previous 50 years combined. A lot of people attribute that to affirmative action policies. I've said before, I've discovered there's more going on behind the scenes that's more responsible for this ascension of Black Brazilians. I have to talk about that in a future video because it is intriguing. As I said before, as much as I think it's great to see Black Brazilians having more opportunities, I still wonder what's really going on because there's always something going on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily know about. And I think I found what I was looking for. But with that said, before I even get into this video, definitely like and share this video. Consider subscribing to the channel. Click on the notification bell so that you'll know when I put up, my next video. So before I get into the video, the part two of this, I also wanted to talk about, I haven't made videos about these films recently, but I will. I've always said how few, just little the representation there has been over the years of Black Brazilians in the Brazilian cinema. And that has changed dramatically, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years. I did a report on that in a previous video. Again, there's reasons for that I'll get into in the future. But for now, I want to talk about two films that, you could say are record breaking. Marchi which means Mars One, Black director and predominantly Black cast, directed by Gabriel Martins. It won eight of the 13 awards it was nominated for at the Grande Prêmio do Cinema Brasileiro, which means the grand prize of Brazilian cinema. They've recently renamed it to honor one of Brazil's greatest actors, the Afro-Brazilian actor Grande Otelo. So this movie cleaned up at the award ceremony. This is the cast here. Black cast, Black directors. As I said, this is another film that just shows how Black Brazilians have come up in the last 10, I'm going to say specifically the last 10 years in terms of Brazilian cinema. And then last year, I think the guy, Marchion won these awards. I think it was released in 2022, maybe, and it won awards at it's like Brazil's equivalent of the Oscars. Then in late last year, at Brazil's most prestigious film festival, the Gramado Awards, the Festival do Cinema Gramado is Brazil's most prestigious film festival. A film about one of the most beloved comedians in the country. He was a samba musician for the first part of his career. Then he became a television comedian, in sketch comedy. Antonio Carlos Bernardes Gomes, better known as Mussum. A film about his life, Mussum o Filmes, was released last year. And it cleaned up at the 51st edition of the Festival de Cinema Gramado. I think it won, how many? I think it won 6 awards. This is just part of the cast of people who were behind this film or who starred in this film. So again, I want to highlight the advances that go along with, some of the bad news that comes out of Brazil. So two films, one at the Brazilian Oscars and the other at Brazil's top film festival cleaned up. They always said you can't have just Black films as you have in the United States because nobody's going to go and see them, but that's turning out to be not true. So for years, Brazilians have talked about how they are losing connection with Brazil's media because they're not seeing themselves represented in the mainstream media. It was also a big year in terms of novellas because there was a situation where 3 of global televisions Novellas, primetime novellas were shown with either a primarily black cast or with black lead characters, which is something that's just rare. Like I said, that's been changing over the last 5 to 10 years. The same global network that people complained about for years is now seems to be at the forefront of what you call diversity. Now, there's a lot more that I could get into about that. I'm not going to have that discussion right now because, I think we do need to analyze, what does this mean, diversity? I mean, where are you going with that? Where are we trying to take people under the guise of diversity? On the one hand, this is a good thing, but what else comes along with this push for diversity of Black Brazilians in the media? Um, Another thing I like to mention is that Black Brazilian soccer players are some of the highest paid in the world over in the European soccer leagues. And they are among they say Brazilians, Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo are among the five highest valued players in the world. Nine other Brazilian players are in the top 10. And it's like all of them are either black or brown. If you look at that, that's pretty amazing. These guys are making, like, their contracts are worth hundreds of millions of euros. And the euro, I haven't looked at it in a while, but I know the last time I saw the euro, it was still had more value than the dollar. So these guys are making more money than, you want to talk about the 1%, they're probably part of the 0.00001% of highest paid people in Brazil, right? So this is what I wanted to highlight that, because it's, I don't want people coming away and saying like, dang, it must be terrible being black in Brazil, because there are challenges, but the opportunities have opened in recent years, and you're seeing Black Brazilians in positions and places that you never saw them before. Okay. That's what I want people to get out of some of the videos that I make. So I want to get into part two of where I left off on this discussion of what is it to be black in Brazil these days. So picking up at number 11 of the comments, I saw your videos about this professor's story and I got emotional. I was also a victim of racism during my master's degree at UFBA, which is the Federal University of Bahia in the Northeast. I abandoned the course and almost fell into depression. A movie just replayed in my head. So this person is talking about how he felt. A lot of people feel this ostracism when they go into areas that are mostly dominated by white or near white Brazilians. They make it very clear and make them feel like they don't belong there. People end up, I've heard this just numerous times, how people end up abandoning their courses because of how they're treated by their colleagues in the university. Okay. Or we'll say classmates. Number 12, at the gate of my house, my neighbor asked if I was the maid. I had a video about this. They did a spoof on this some time ago in a YouTube video where they just made a clown. They clown the situation, because a lot of times when people go into middle class neighborhoods and a black person answers the door, they automatically assume they must be the help, right? I open the door at my house and they ask me, is the owner of the house home, right? 13, I noticed this even at mass. I hardly ever see black people when the parish is in the downtown or south region. On the other hand, in periphery areas, black people are in the majority. So again, you see this kind of segregation in in city surroundings, or you see this almost like a redlining type of thing, where you see, well, in the ritzier areas you're going to see mostly white or almost white people, whereas in the favelas and the surrounding areas of the city is going to be majority black and brown people. 14 says, on a recent trip to Salvador, I noticed that in my hotel my husband and I were in, and in the restaurants we frequented, we were the only black people eating there. The others were serving. That's something you hear all the time. Going to a ritzy restaurant, you only see black people serving. Sometimes you don't even see the black people serving there. 15, my solidarity with Francinette. I'm assuming this person is referring to somebody else who made a comment. I was called a capitã do mata, meaning captain of the woods, by a teacher after taking over as a vice president of a school. Now, as a principal, I face misogyny, sexism, and especially racism every day. Now, this person mentioned this term, a capitã do mato. Now, what does that mean? A capitã do mato, and I've talked about this on the blog, was a slave chaser in Brazil's slave era, when slaves would escape plantations, sugar mills. They would send out a hired capitão do mata. He's like the captain of the woods. His job is to go out and hunt down the runaway slaves and bring them back to captivity. So nowadays, when black Brazilians call somebody a capitão do mata, or capitã, in this case, a woman, They're saying you're a sellout. You're an Oreo cookie. You're all the pejorative terms that we use in the United States to describe somebody who we see as a sellout. They use the term capital do mato, right? 16, I'm a coordinator at a school and I have a teacher who is clearly annoyed by the fact that I'm the person who is going to guide and supervise his work. So he has chosen to simply ignore all my requests, upward harassment that disguises veiled racism. People don't like being receiving your orders from a Black person, basically what they're saying there. I've heard that a lot. 17, there was a doctor when I did a residency in a hospital here in Curitiba being the capital city of Paraná, if I'm not mistaken, in the south of Brazil. He was always mistaken for colleagues that worked in sanitation, a fact that people are not used to seeing Black people in certain positions, which I just said. 18, a security guard at the same store in São Leopoldo. I believe that's a city in Rio Grande do Sul, another state in southern Brazil. Now, in southern Brazil, it's the area of the country where 80% of the people consider themselves to be white. A security guard at the same store in Sao Leopoldo followed me down the aisles while I was choosing chocolates for Easter. I asked him what his problem was, and he asked me the same question. I complained to the store's ombudsman and posted it on their website. Several people complained about the same security guard, and no one from management did anything about it. I went in the store with the wrong skin color. No need for comment with that one. Number 19, once at a hospital, the doctor asked me if I was a servant. Nothing against anyone with a decent job or this type of job. It's just, why is it assumed that Black people always had these positions? He says, I am a nursing technician. Then I reminded him that I was the one who had entered his room a short time before to ask about illegible medication he had prescribed. In other words, he hadn't even seen me before. We're invisible. So he's saying here that this person actually saw him and didn't even notice who he was, and then questioned who he was when he saw him again. Again, Black people are invisible, or Black people all look alike. Am I wrong? Or how would you interpret that? Let me see. I'm going to skip that one. Where's the tax engineer? Number 21. Well, 20, he says, I'm an engineer and I've been going through this for 25 years. 21, I avoid wearing my black suit because I always get mistaken for store security guard when I leave a hearing and need to go to the mall. I mentioned this earlier. A Black man with a suit at a mall, he must be working in security. Number 22, it's happened to me several times before. Once I took a cab wearing a suit and tie, small talk here, small talk there. I said I worked in the media sector at the Central Bank of Brazil, the headquarters building. Shortly afterwards, the driver asked, are you a security guard? Again, security guard. Another time I went to look at a property, and after identifying myself, the salesman said, are you an African from an embassy? Everyone reacts in one way or another. Sometimes I get angry. Sometimes I laugh at the prejudice, and prejudice everyone has. It's amazing because I've read this story just countless times over the years. If you see a Black Brazilian on an airplane, some people have talked about how the stewardess, the people on the plane will start speaking to them in English, assuming if it's a Black person on the plane, they can't be Brazilian. So in this case, this guy's a Black Brazilian. He works in the media sector at the Central Bank of Brazil, and he's asked, are you an African from the embassy? Because you can't be a Black Brazilian. You can't be a Black Brazilian. This is, maybe people will say this is not racism, but I know this would get on my nerves if people automatically assumed who and what I was just because I'm Black. And this is what we're seeing throughout these 22 comments that I just shared. Now, these are some other comments that I found on the comments that were posted. In this section, people who posted something on the Instagram post after they read all of these comments. And this first person says, and we're still told that there is no racism in Brazil, the famed racial democracy that doesn't exist. I myself, during an internship, I'm a psychologist. While having lunch on the balcony, was asked by a user to clean the bathroom of the unit. And this speech did not come as a simple request, but as an order. The sweetheart finished with, these people don't even like to work. 15 minutes later, her daughter would be attended to by me. She's a psychologist, and she was, mistaken for being the cleaning lady. How many times have I heard this? Next comment. My mother has already been failed at school. She and her friend Even though they got very good grades, the detail is that they are both black. The biggest detail is that this same teacher called them monkeys and adjectives like that, but there is no such thing as racism. So it sounds to me like this person is saying that her mother and her friend got good grades in school, but they were still flunked. This is crazy. Let me see what else we got here. Next comment. I've just come back from a trip to Alagoas, which is another state in northeastern Brazil. My husband and I went to a very trendy restaurant on the waterfront, one with the teapot in the front. I won't mention the name. It was very crowded, and we were the only black people eating there. Again, we're the only black people eating in a ritzy restaurant. The others were the staff. We received several indiscreet and disapproving looks. The big question is, can't we occupy the spaces that white people think are theirs? But we are resistance. Again, what are you black people doing here? Seen it time and time again. Last comment. I went to sign a document in an office, and before me was a white man. The doorman asked him where the quote unquote doctor wanted to go. I've got to explain that in a minute. I told him I wanted to go to office X and that I had already seen which floor it was on by the sign. He asked me to wait and called the office and asked, "Doctor, there's a delivery man here. Can I let him up?" At that moment, I scolded the doorman. And when I went up to the office, I also told them that they should rethink their staff's behavior because I know the reason for his confusion and that luckily for them, I was willing to let him through or, to let this pass. It's amazing how for them, I can only be someone who meets other people's needs. Okay, so what I want to point out here is he says the person in Portuguese, doctor is doutor. And in Brazil, people will refer to you as doutor, even if you're not necessarily a doctor, but it's as a sign of respect. It's like people are looking at you as if you are superior to themselves. So you don't have to be necessarily a doctor, but just a person who demands respect, a person in a certain elevated position in society. People call you doutor or doctor, even if you're not a doctor. And so this is what he's saying again. I'm getting tired of being disrespected. I mean, he mistook him for the delivery boy. This is every day you see something like this in Brazil. I have to say I don't believe this ever happened to me while I was in Brazil, but I can't deny that this is the experiences of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people every day. On my first trip to Brazil, I remember being on the plane and I was talking to a white Brazilian guy, real cool guy. But I was flying into Sao Paulo to catch a connection flight to Bahia. Again, Bahia is the state where everybody associates with black culture. And the guy asked me, "Oh, are you on your way to Bahia?" And I'm looking like, what made you ask me that? I mean, why can't I be going to Sao Paulo? Just, this is my last destination, But I'm assuming, and this is the thing about racism, or just, we don't want to even say racism, just race associated thought or assumptions. Is it the fact that I'm black that I have to be traveling to Bahia, where, is known for its vibrant black culture, Anyway, that's what I wanted to share about today in this video. What is it? What is it like being black in Brazil? And I'm not telling you this happens. This is, if you go to Brazil, this is gonna just happen to you. But I'm just saying, I've been reading these type of comments for a couple of decades now. Brazil has a reserved place, quote unquote, place for black Brazilians, and they're not expected to be in certain places. So these are the everyday experiences of most black Brazilians. You can see this every now and then. I have to do a story like this just to show people like, yeah, this is how it is. Blame the United States for racism, but just ignore what goes on in Brazil every day. Like I said, I've been documenting this for over 2 decades. Anyway, what did you think of this video? Drop a comment in the comment section. Love to hear what you got on your mind. Tell me about stories you would like for me to cover if it has something to do with race or black Brazilians. Like this video, share this video, click on the, subscribe to this channel. Click on that notification bell so you know when I put up another video. And with that said, I'm going to end the video here and request that you all come back and check out the next video that I post.